bar is loud until it isn't. A laugh hangs too long, someone misreads it. A chair scrapes back. The room tightens. In Goodfellas, this is where Tommy becomes a legend. A man who can turn a joke into a threat into a beating into a body. The film makes it feel inevitable, like the violence is the point. But the first thing the movie gets wrong is simple. It gives you certainty. In real life, the man most often cited as the basis for Tommy DeVito doesn't end with a scene you can watch. He ends the way real organised crime stories often end, with a missing person report, with competing theories, with no body recovered, with law enforcement not even agreeing at the time whether he was dead. Time magazine reported in March 1979 that a suspect named Thomas DeSimone had been reported missing by his wife, that the FBI believed he'd been murdered in a dispute over the Lufthansa money, and that New York police were not so sure he was dead. That's the real opening, not a punchline, not an Oscar clip. Vanishing. So when the movie sells you Tommy, it isn't just dramatising a character. It's replacing a foggy historical record with a clean ending. And the question the film avoids, because it ruins the fantasy, is this. If he was so uncontrollable, how did he survive inside that world long enough to disappear? In the film, he's Tommy DeVito, a name that fits on a poster, a name that feels like a complete person. In real reporting and later reconstructions, the name you keep running into is Thomas DeSimone, but running into is the point, because so much of what the public knows about him comes from stories told after the fact, from memoir, from informants, from men who survived by telling a version of events that kept them alive. The movie doesn't warn you about that, it can't. If it did, the spell breaks. So Goodfellas makes Tommy feel like a fixed object, a certainty. Reality makes him a moving target. Even basics wobble. Time described DeSimone as 32 in March 1979. Other later summaries don't always line up perfectly on biographical details. That's not trivia. That's the shape of the whole story. The record is thin, the legend is thick. The film also makes a second move. It frames Tommy as an exception, a freak event inside an otherwise organised organisation. But crews don't keep exceptions for entertainment. They keep what's useful. So if DeSimone truly moved in that circle, around JFK thefts and the network later tied to Lufthansa, then he wasn't just tolerated, he was useful, or protected, or both. And that flips the lens, because the scariest part isn't one volatile man, it's the room that keeps making space for him. The film wants you to fear Tommy's temper. The real question is who kept deciding that temper was worth the trouble. The movie treats JFK like a stage. Quick cuts, easy swagger, money sitting there waiting to be taken. Reality is colder. On April 12, 1967, a UPI story published in newspapers reported that $420,000 in cash and checks was missing from a locked room at Kennedy International Airport, with the FBI involved. That number matters, but the locked room matters more, because a locked room at an international airport isn't supposed to be beatable. If money can vanish from there, it points to what the film doesn't linger on. Not bravery, not personality, compromise. Somebody had access. Somebody knew routines. Somebody believed nobody would talk. And if you're trying to understand the real man behind Tommy, this is where the film's focus on temperament becomes a distraction. Organised theft isn't powered by rage, it's powered by systems. Airport theft is logistics, a chain of human decisions, a chain that works only if silence is enforced. So Tommy's real function, if you strip away the movie's punchlines, wouldn't be comic chaos. It would be pressure, intimidation, the kind of presence that makes witnesses rethink their future. If this world was really run on strict rules and discipline, how did a locked room at JFK turn into an open door? There's a moment in Goodfellas that audiences treat like documentary. The table, the joking, the sudden shift. The film uses it like evidence. Tommy is unpredictable, charming, dangerous, but that moment is cinema. Not a court exhibit, not a transcript. It's built from an idea, how disrespect and status work in that life, then sharpened into a perfect weapon. And it works because it gives you a rule: laugh wrong, die. Reality is less neat. Unpredictable men are risk, and risk gets managed. So if Tommy was truly as volatile as the film portrays, then something else must also be true. Either he wasn't random in the way the movie suggests, or the people above him were willing to absorb the damage because he produced results. The movie makes the room afraid of Tommy, but real-world crews also use men like that, because fear is useful. The film calls him a loose cannon, but loose cannons get thrown overboard, so why was he still on deck? In the movie, the shine box insult detonates immediately. A made man gets beaten, then killed, then buried, and the film carries that guilt forward as the reason Tommy dies. Clean, cinematic, moral. Reality doesn't move like that. William Billy Bat Spentvena was a real Gambino figure, murdered on June 11th, 1970. That date matters because the Lufthansa heist, the one the film ties emotionally to Tommy's downfall, occurred on December 11th, 1978. The film compresses. It blends years. It stacks causes and effects until they click, but an 8-year gap changes the meaning. Either consequences can take years, or the reasons for DeSimone's disappearance weren't a single cause as the film implies, or the public narrative has been smoothed by repetition. The movie turns "this is what was said" into "this is what happened." The film sells instant mob justice. The timeline forces you to ask why justice, if it was justice, waited. The Lufthansa heist is the centerpiece. In the film, it plays with the confidence of surveillance footage, but the difference between film and history is this. Film can show you the inside. History often only shows you the hole it left. The verifiable basics are solid. On December 11th, 1978, thieves stole $5 million in cash and $875,000 in jewellery from Lufthansa's cargo operation at JFK, $5.875 million total, then the largest cash theft in US history at the time. But the film quietly swaps what happened for who can be proved. Decades later, that gap still mattered. In 2015, a Brooklyn federal jury acquitted Vincent Asara of charges tied to the Lufthansa case. That doesn't erase the heist. It exposes the distance between legend and conviction. And the legal record does contain at least one hard anchor. Lufthansa cargo agent Louis Werner was convicted in connection with the robbery, reflected in federal appellate records. So the real shape is not everyone got nailed. It's one conviction, many accusations, and a myth that outruns the courtroom. The film gives you a heist you can know. The record gives you a heist that's famous precisely because so much can't be sealed shut. If Lufthansa is the myth, the van is the detail that makes it feel real. The movie turns it into a morality tale. Someone screws up, the crew cleans up. Reputable summaries of the heist commonly describe the getaway vehicle being found as a key mistake that helped expose the operation. That part fits the world. Small mistakes can ruin big crimes. But the film makes another leap. It assigns clarity. In cinema, you can watch punishment happen. In real life, what you see, especially in contemporaneous reporting, is something uglier. March 1979, Time reports DeSimone missing. FBI belief, murdered over a dispute about the loot. NYPD, not sure he's dead. That's not a neat purge. That's confusion while the story is still alive. The film turns the aftermath into a clean purge. The contemporary reporting shows investigators didn't even agree on what the purge was. In the movie, Robert's Lounge is atmosphere. Neon, smoke, laughter with teeth. In the broader Lufthansa story, it's often described as a hub tied to the crew around Jimmy Burke and the orbit around JFK theft and planning. And then the real world does something the film can't control. In June 1980, investigators excavated bones from the basement of the former Robert's Lounge site reported as a potentially significant clue in the Lufthansa saga. Bones, not closure. And even that detail has uncertainty attached in later reporting. Some accounts have disputed whether all remains were human. So the honest version isn't they found the bodies. The honest version is they dug, they found remains, and the story still didn't resolve. That's the theme again. The film wants violence to feel personal. Ego, insult, temper. A basement with bones suggests something else. Routine, disposal, infrastructure. The film turns a bar into a backdrop. Reality turns it into a question that never fully closes. The spider killing is one of the film's sharpest gut punches. A small humiliation. The gun. A room that goes quiet. As cinema, it's perfect. As history, it's harder. Many retellings link Spider to a young man named Michael Gianco, and place the incident around 1970 in the same circle described by Henry Hill. But those details don't sit in the public record the way Lufthansa's core facts do, or the way Werner's conviction does. There's no easy, clean, court-tested package the way the scene suggests. So the real confrontation is this. Film. You saw it, so it's known. Reality. Even if it occurred as later described, the documentation available to the public doesn't match the certainty the scene produces, and the truly terrifying part isn't even the shot. It's the room. The room keeps functioning. Silence protects money. The movie blames one trigger-happy man. Reality keeps pointing back to the group that survives the moment. Now we reach the moment the film wants you to remember forever. Tommy gets dressed up. He thinks he's being made. He walks into an empty room. He gets shot. Justice as choreography. But in contemporaneous reporting, you don't get that. You get missing. You get belief. You get disagreement. March 1979. Time describes DeSimone as a missing suspect. Reported missing by his wife. FBI believe he was murdered in a dispute over the loot. NYPD uncertain he is dead. That is not a documented ceremony gone wrong. That is an unsolved disappearance in real time. The film's execution scene is a narrative solution. It turns confusion into closure. It turns competing theories into one moral. And once you accept that moral, you stop asking the questions that matter. If it was over money, who decided? If police weren't sure he was dead, what kept it from becoming a clean homicide story? If he was killed, why does the record end in fog? The film ends with a gunshot you can hear. The record ends with a disappearance, and two agencies not aligned on what it meant. One reason the movie is so confident is that it isn't required to prove anything. A courtroom is. And when the Lufthansa legend walked into federal court, it didn't come out with cinematic closure. Vincent Asaro was acquitted in 2015 of Lufthansa-related charges in Brooklyn Federal Court. That doesn't mean the heist didn't happen. It means something worse for the myth. A story can be culturally true and legally unprovable. And if that's true for the heist, the biggest part of the saga, then how much more fragile are the smaller stories the film uses to define Tommy? The movie makes Tommy the face of consequence. The legal record reminds you consequence is uneven, delayed, and sometimes missing. The film makes the mafia feel all-powerful. The court record shows the legend is powerful, but proof is not. Here's what Goodfellas does brilliantly. It seduces you into thinking you're watching truth, the speed, the voice, the confidence. And inside that confidence is the biggest lie, that Tommy is the explanation. The film frames him as the wild animal that ruins everything, so the audience can believe the rest are just greedy, just human. Reality doesn't support that comfort. Lufthansa required planning, inside knowledge, and a network. Major airport theft headlines years earlier suggest access and compromise, not impulsive chaos. Contemporary reporting on DeSimone ends in uncertainty, not closure. That doesn't look like one monster ruining a perfect machine. It looks like a machine built to do this. So if DeSimone existed in this orbit the way the narrative claims, he wasn't the engine. He was a part, a function. And functions are kept until they become inconvenient. The film says, remove Tommy and the horror ends. Reality says, remove Tommy and the machine keeps running. The movie kills Tommy so you can feel balance, so you can leave believing the world corrects itself. But the most verifiable ending, closest to the time, doesn't offer balance. It offers ambiguity. A man reported missing. Federal belief he was murdered over money. Local police uncertainty. No body. No public closure. And outside the story, something else happens. The heist becomes legend. The legend becomes entertainment. The entertainment becomes profit. History outlets keep revisiting Lufthansa because it remains iconic, and because the money was never fully recovered in any satisfying public way. The real people, especially the missing ones, don't get permanence. They get rumour. They get fragments. They get unanswered questions. So here's the inversion the movie can't admit. Tommy doesn't only die in the story, Tommy gets converted from a disputed, partially documented human being into a clean, repeatable character. A character who makes chaos feel understandable. A character who takes blame off the system. The movie's final gift is a gunshot. Reality's final truth is quieter. Sometimes the strongest power isn't the trigger. It's the silence afterward. And sometimes the only thing that truly lasts is the story, including the parts no one could ever prove.